The most popular FK8 intake these days by far is the PRL Motorsports intake. We're going to tell you why we didn't veer very far off of that path for our own, as well as if it's a good fit for your own project. We're going to do some stock intake data logging and compare it to what the PRL intake looks like so you guys can see, so we can see the differences. We're doing the race MAF, so it is a big difference. There's a lot behind doing an intake upgrade on an FK8, especially if you're upgrading the MAF size like we are. So let's get after it. There's probably a lot of questions that you have if you're watching this video. Hopefully we can answer some. Let's go. At this point, the PRL intake is almost standard operating procedure for anybody modding their own Type R. It is by far the most popular intake on the market, and that's not due to PRL marketing the heck out of it. Like many of their parts, it really sells itself through both the design and the results, both of which we'll get into here shortly. Keep in mind, you can find these directly on our website at edgeautosport.com. PRL makes many other intakes for all the newer generation Hondas and Acuras, including some, like of the CRV and other like the 2.0 non-turbo applications. They make a lot of different intakes. So make sure you go check out edgeautosport.com where we have all of them listed. And as long as they're in stock, they will be to you in no time so that you can duplicate what you're watching us do today. Let's go ahead and check out what it looks like when you get yours in the mail, what to expect when you're just opening this thing up. Here are all of the parts, nicely packaged, some clamps, huge filter. The pictures really don't do it justice. You can see my hand, this filter is pretty enormous for actually how short it is. It's really, really wide. And this is gonna be, part of the intake system. You can see how big this adapter here is for some of this piping. Here's gonna be the MAF housing right here, which we'll show you here in a second. And then obviously the box, and if you don't know already, the box is super important for this intake system. It really helps keep the cold air separated, or keeps the intake air separated from the hot air inside the engine bay. We'll get into that here in a little bit. The custom coupler here for all these stock fitting locations. And a couple other things here. There is one little thing I wanted to check on before I installed anything, and that is this little thing right here coming into the stock coupler, where all these fittings come in for the various like evap and intake recirculation systems and all that stuff. So here's a radium catch can, and this thing goes all the way over to here. I don't think that we're gonna have an issue here. This should, I would imagine that fitting fits right in there, and I have some extra hosing here in case I need to adjust that or not. If you find this video helpful, we would sincerely appreciate a like by hitting that thumbs up button over there. And if you want to get the most out of our channel and all the content we put out for the newer Honda stuff, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell button for notifications. You'll get notified whenever we do new Honda videos or any other video that's relevant to you. I mentioned doing some data logging on the stock intake before we did this install, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, close the hood on the car, get out on the road, do a quick data log, and then come back and start the install. All right, let's see what the stock data log looks like. We'll compare the two at the end of the video after we do the PRL intake system, but we'll get our stock intake data log right now. We've done data logs before, but the reason why it's important to get a new one is we want to see back to back what the data logs look like in similar environments. Different temperatures, different humidity levels, different conditions are going to give us different data logs. So we want to try to do a back-to-back comparison as much as possible. All right, we are back. Let's get started on the install. Check it out. There we go. Nice and clean. I'm not gonna lie, I know PRL has logos everywhere. This one on the box is subtle and nice. I don't mind that at all. Kind of wish there wasn't a huge PRL logo right here, but you know, that's how PRL does it. That's fine, whatever. We could probably put some like heat shielding on here and make it look nice. I know a lot of other guys do that, but there is the finished product. Not a very difficult install at all. And I am very pleased that the radium, I mean, I expected it to, but the radium line that I had modified to put into the stock intake goes in the same place. You know, I mean, the stock intake, it would have gone in the same place anyway if it was stock. So that worked out nicely. We are going to be flashing a new map with our access port because the Race MAF has a larger diameter MAF housing. The purpose of that is to extend the range of the MAF sensor and the ability to read more air coming in. With the stock MAF sensor, we were hitting the MAF limit. So it's got a 5-volt limit. We were really close to the edge, 4.9 something. And if that happens right around 6,800 RPM, could happen a little bit earlier, the air starts to, the way it's flowing and the volume of it, it starts to max out that sensor and reach the peak voltage range. And it basically puts your car into limp mode until you restart it. And then you really have to reset the codes and everything in order to get it to work properly again. So it goes into a limp mode, it does not like it. And so that's why we need a bigger MAF housing so that we can extend the range of that MAF sensor. The street MAF from the PRL intake system, it also has the ability to extend the MAF range a little bit. I think, you know, like you don't need a tune for the street MAF from PRL, which means it's really using the same MAF calibration, the exact same one. You're not changing it. So in theory, you'd think that it would have the same, but it does extend the MAF a little bit, the MAF sensor range a little bit. I think if I had to guess, you know, like I'm not an engineer, but I would imagine the flow is a little bit more laminar. It's a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer going through the PRL intake system as opposed to the stock system. The stock system does have a nice radius to smooth out the flow coming around the edge of the MAF sensor housing. But, you know, I would imagine the PRL system does a little bit better, so maybe that's why. So even the street MAF will kind of help you out a little bit, but ultimately, if you're gonna do a big turbo, you know, ethanol, full bolt-ons, and really go for a lot more power, it's usually a good idea to just start with the Race MAF so you don't have to worry about that. I know that Honda has a new MAF sensor that you can buy that extends the range also using a stock size intake. That's fine too, you can do that. The Cobb isn't gonna work with that unit. Well, in theory, maybe it would work with that unit. You just have to do some recalibration maybe. But for the sake of making power, I mean, getting a bigger intake is probably a better idea anyway. Just getting less restriction, more flow, less pressure drop throughout the entire intake system. So I think the PRL Race MAF is definitely the right fit for us. If any of that makes sense to you, you know, maybe you can determine if it makes sense for you or not. A stock style intake system is going to do just fine for a lot of people that are doing a few bolt-ons, making a few extra horsepower, and that's it. It's not a big deal. But if you want to go big turbo, this is probably the route you should take, or something similar. So anyway, let's go ahead and flash the new map with our access port in the car, and then we'll take this thing out and make sure it's running right, make sure the trims are okay, and then we'll data log. Map is flashing to the car, so we'll wait for that to happen. It'll take about 5 minutes. A couple questions might be, when should you upgrade your intake system, especially if you're doing a new MAF sensor housing that's larger like we are, where you have to reflash it? You should do it pretty much after you tune or get a tuning device, right? So the PRL Race MAF, one of the nice things about it is there's a lot of compatibility within K-Tuner, Honda. I think there's maps already built out in both of those setups for the PRL Race MAF. So that's easy as pie. You just, you know, install the part on the car, you flash your car with a map that's already on there, and you're good to go. The Cobb unit, they don't have a bunch of different intake systems that are pre-programmed into the device like Honda and K-Tuner, but you can do the exact same thing that Honda and K-Tuner both do with the Cobb tuner, with the access port, and just recalibrate the MAF. Like, that's what we did manually for our car. We've had those files. So like if you got tuned from us and you had a access port, it wouldn't be a problem. We would just send you a new map and you could fire it up right away. There's no manual work that needs to go on really for that. We already have that file. We've built that out using our car and several other cars to dial that in. So, you know, we have that for the access port. If you want to get custom tuned by us, we'll already have it. But any competent tuner will be able to do that. It's a very simple procedure to calibrate a MAF. So anyway, PRL Race MAF or something like that, bigger MAF housing, do it really at any point after you have a tuning device. You can really put it on whenever. The street MAF or any stock size MAF housing, you do not need to tune for. You don't need to do anything different for the tune. You could put a street MAF housing on the car, probably stock, and it'd be fine. But tuning is always better, as we all know. So if you have any questions about that or just about the nature of installing this stuff or using this stuff, let us know in the comments below. We'll definitely help you out and answer any questions that you have. You can always email us too. But this thing is at 45%. We are going to wait for this thing to get done flashing and then head out on the road. So we're beginning to see some short-term fuel trims up to 7%, minus 10%. That's not uncommon while you're shifting or transitioning from one gear to another or something like that, in and out of throttle. Everybody reports that you can hear the turbo, which I expected, and you definitely can't hear it. And it's not crazy loud, but it's definitely there, and you can hear the blow-off valve, which is cool. Honestly, that's a nice feature of upgrading your intake system like this, is you get to hear the blow-off valve without upgrading it, which is nice. A lot of people get an upgraded blow-off valve just to hear it, and that's fine. You know, sometimes you're taking away a little bit of functionality from that, but being able to hear it that clearly and nice just from upgrading your intake is definitely a plus with this thing. Yeah, perfect. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and data log this thing. Perfect. So we'll head back, compare the two logs, see what we got. So as you can see, there are two different lines on this graph indicating the MAF voltage of the stock intake, which is the red line, and then there's the MAF voltage of the PRL Race MAF Intake, which is the yellow line. These graphs both have almost identical airflow measurements throughout every single RPM point, but this is the voltage that the MAF sensor is reading. So as you can see with the stock intake, we were super close to the peak of 5 volts at the, especially, you know, the closer it got to high RPMs. And we like I said earlier, we did experience some cuts earlier where it would go into limp mode because it just got too close to 5 volts. But with the PRL Race MAF Intake, you will not experience that. Obviously, we're going to add more parts to, you know, create more airflow, and that'll raise the voltage up, and this ultimately just gives us that ceiling that we need to keep making more power and be able to read it. That about wraps up the video for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, learned a little bit about the PRL Race MAF Intake. Again, if you have any questions, comments, let us know. Let us know what you think of the video. Again, if you liked it, make sure you like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. And we'll see you on the next video where we're going to install the XDI fuel pump. That's the next necessary modification. I've mentioned it before, but that's definitely what we're doing next. We're hitting some low fuel pressures as we ramp up into boost, so we don't want that to become an issue as we keep modding. So we'll do that next. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.